Some people think that China should be grateful to the USA for lifting it out of poverty. To those people, I'll be polite and just say, you have no idea what you're talking about. I won't suggest what I really think. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of My Take on China. The USA went to war in Korea to prevent the spread of communism. It's widely acknowledged that this was a proxy war between USA and China, or should I say democracy and communism. From the 1950s to the mid-1970s, the USA sanctioned China. And when people say Mao killed 30 million of his own people, I say again, you have no idea what you're talking about. Academic reports suggest that the increases in life expectancy during Mao's era were, and I quote, among the most rapid sustained increases in documented global history, end of quote. Whatever deaths were caused by starvations, and those numbers are still debatable, were caused by not being allowed to import necessities because of US embargoes. Does that sound familiar? Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, many other places have all experienced deaths of their populations from lack of food, healthcare, or other vital supplies, and all because the US did or still do the same thing. And each time it happens, Western media point and say, look what communism has done, or look what socialism has done. Rather than be grateful for how the US has helped China, I say the US should be grateful that China are not like them and will not seek retribution for what they have done. The deaths of so many people around the world are on the USA because of their ideology and hatred for an ideology that they can't exploit. When the US went to war with Vietnam, it was for the same reasons. Notice the geographical location of both of these wars? One bordering China's north, the other bordering China's south. They were working to keep China in poverty because they wanted to prove that communism and socialism were bad. And the only way to prove that was to starve them, fight them, or undermine them. And they've been doing one, two, or all of those things for the last 70 years. When China did open, bear in mind it was Mao who started this process on his own terms, the US wanted China's help to slow Russia. They didn't want to help China. It was Deng who opened and reformed the Chinese economy to allow Western capitalist businesses to operate in China. But they only wanted to operate here for one reason, and one reason only. It most certainly was not something Chinese people should be grateful for. By operating in China, they were able to reduce their costs. And every time they reduced their costs, they increased their profits. They were exploiting Chinese workers, but much more importantly, they were exploiting and continue to exploit their own customers. Think about Apple and Tesla and many others, the world's most profitable companies. They make such huge profits by driving prices down, exploiting the manufacturers who work for them and the millions of factory hands who get a pittance for a day's labor. But then they bring their products to the West and sell them with a massive margin. They build in obsolescence, so we have to buy more products more often, and they enrich only the people wealthy enough to invest in their company by exploiting those of us who think we're moving up market because we can finally afford their products. The CPC as a government knew all about this, and they refused to be part of it. They said, if you want to work in China with our people, you need to pay fair wages, and you need to share your technology, and you also need to abide by our laws. And the companies that did that were welcomed, and they're still doing great business in China now. A great example is VW, one of the first, but there are also many hotel chains like Hilton and Marriott, as well as food stores, McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks. They all love China, and sadly, in my opinion, China also loves them. Companies that didn't do that are not here. Most of the IT companies have moved out, but Microsoft is still here. Notice how Apple has moved from place to place in China, while Huawei has remained headquartered and operational in the same city since its inception. Huawei pursues a socialist environment where everyone gains. Many people don't know this. There are no shareholders of Huawei who are not employed or were not employed by the company for at least 10 years. Work for Apple for 10 years. You'll be unemployed, or you will have needed to move 3 times to a cheaper and less well-developed region where the costs are lower. I can't remember when Apple products were ever reduced in price, but I can point to many times when an Apple factory has moved from Shenzhen to Dongguan, from Dongguan to Zhengzhou. Every time the wages and land costs reduce, but every time the price of a product either stays the same or increases. When China changed direction under Hu Jintao to one of scientific development, he wanted to do several things. One was to improve the lives of people left behind. Another was to reduce the environmental impact that heavy manufacturing was creating. And the most important was to move China up the value chain so that science and technology products would replace making shoes, jeans, and shirts. We're seeing the benefits of that right now. If China had remained low-tech as America wanted them, they'd be a dirty, corrupt country. The US and other developed nations would continue to reap profits, but good governance has stopped them. Now China has improved in every single measurement. The air is cleaner, the water is clearer, the education is better, and both wealth and health have improved immeasurably. USA did nothing at all to contribute to those improvements. They are solely China's. China does not need to be grateful for this. The world needs to be grateful to China for lifting 800 million people out of poverty, for the higher education of more than 60% of its school leavers, for advancing clean and green technology and not continuing to exploit their workers or their environment in which they worked. Let's be honest. If we didn't have a developed world, there wouldn't be a developing world. The only reason there's still a developing world after 400 years of colonialization and imperialism is because the developed countries wanted it that way, and they still do. So no, people in China do not need to be grateful to America. In fact, Americans should be very grateful to the Chinese for all their hard work, but more importantly, they should be angry with their own leaders for driving them into dependence on cheap products that they're paying high prices for and expensive products that have a huge profitability for their wealthy investors. Let's get over the China should be grateful trope. And thanks once again for watching my take on China. I will see you next time. Bye for now.